If you're afraid to communicate your sustainability efforts because you don't want to come across as greenwashing or you don't want to get backlash, then you need to watch this video. Let's dive in. My first tip is that there's no perfectly sustainable brand. Quite frankly, that just does not exist. If you think about it, being in business has a cost to the environment. You are using materials, you're using water, you're emitting carbon, you're using electricity. There's all these different things. And so if you wanted to be perfectly sustainable, then you wouldn't have started a brand in the first place. And so with that being said, the name of the game is really balance. You want to figure out how to run a thriving, successful, profitable business while still having a reasonable impact on the environment. And of course, you're going to continuously try to mitigate and reduce that impact. And so that's really what we're here to do. We want to figure out how to balance it. And sustainability is also a continuous journey. You're not going to wake up one day and all of a sudden magically be sustainable. It just does not work that way. And so you're going to continuously improve and continuously do better. That's the part that really makes it fun and worthwhile. So with that being said, I hope that this alleviates some of the pressure, because I know a lot of the times genuinely conscious brands such as yourselves feel like they can't talk about what they're doing or they can't share because they're not quote unquote perfect. But what I'm saying is that a perfect brand does not exist. So take that as a form of liberation, and all of a sudden now you can start to say what you're doing. And I think that's so important because we have fast fashion brands saying they're sustainable left, right, and center until they're blue in the face. But if you actually do it in a way where you're authentic, you're transparent, and you really are sharing where you're at and where you want to go, and you just share that you're not perfect, but hey, we're striving to be as perfect as we can be, I think that goes really far. So my first tip is just to acknowledge there's no perfectly sustainable brand. You are perfect the way you are, and so just communicate it and do it in a way that's meaningful, and that's what we're going to be talking about in this video. And building on top of my previous point, you need to be transparent and authentic. This is key because you're not going to be perfect, that's okay, but you need to start to share what you're doing, because a lot of consumers nowadays assume that if you don't say anything, you're not doing anything. And that might not be the case, because you just might be too shy or you might be too scared to talk about it because you don't want to get backlash or come across as greenwashing. But what I'm saying is that being perfectly sustainable is not a thing. And so hopefully that alleviates some of the pressure and gives you the space to share. And so what I always get our clients to do is to share the sustainability priorities or their focuses. And if you want more information on how you can do that, watch this video. And so you're going to share your sustainability priorities. You also are going to share your targets and your roadmap, because that way your customers can also see what you're striving towards, and then they can vote with their dollars and support you and give you the funding that you need to get there. So that's really important. And then as well, you want to make sure that you're also always just sharing and being authentic to who you are as well. So never shy away from something, even if something's only half done, because this is what you can do based on your time and your resources and your budget. That's okay. Just say that this year we're only able to reduce our carbon emissions by X percentage. We really wanted to do more. However, our team had to deal with this, and this. And so we've really prioritized it for next year. And this is what our plan looks like. That is something that I feel like brands don't do enough. They don't meet things, or they don't feel like things are going according to plan. They'll just sweep it under the rug, but that does everyone a disservice. And so be transparent and be authentic to your brand. If you're getting a lot out of these tips, I also wanted to share that I have a free sustainability ebook and a free sustainability masterclass. Both of these resources will really help you set up your sustainability strategy, so make sure you snag it at recloseted.com/sustainability. Now let's dive back into the video. The next tip is to provide metrics. If you can provide data to really support the fact that you are making a difference, that is so powerful. Because if you think about it, fast fashion brands can say they're green, eco-conscious, organic, whatever that means. You know, sustainable until they're blue in the face, or I guess green in the face in this case. But if you have data and analytics to back up what you're doing, and your consumers can actually see the impact, that goes so far, and that will cut through the noise. Whenever our clients are afraid of greenwashing, we always tell them that you can empower your customers by showing them the data. The numbers and the facts speak for themselves. And so if you can say on your website, on your hang tags, wherever you want to put these metrics, that, hey, we're saving, X amount of water, we are saving X amount of textiles from the landfills, we are, saving X amount of carbon emissions, that is so much more powerful than just saying that you're sustainable or that you're conscious, right? So really try to provide metrics whenever possible. And the bonus with this as well is when you are analyzing this data internally, you also know where you're at and where you're going. And so you can make a roadmap and you can really understand what the plan is to continuously improve your sustainability strategy and your sustainability journey. And building upon my previous point, my next tip is to share your targets and your roadmaps with your customers, because that way they can see where you're at and where you plan to go. This is great because that will cut through the greenwashing noise, because action speaks louder than words, but also your customers can see what your plan is, and then they can feel compelled to vote with their dollars and support you by giving you their funding versus another fast fashion brand, so that you can actually accomplish the goals that you set out to achieve. So this is really important, and you can share this on your brand sustainability page. You can share this on your social media platforms, on your email newsletters, everywhere and anywhere. But I would be so transparent around where you're at, where you're going, and what your plan looks like. And make sure you communicate this in a way where it's not a scientific report that's really, really hard to dig through. Communicate it with graphics, with figures, and make it really user-friendly so that people can read it and understand it. And my next tip is to not oversimplify things. This is key, because I think in today's day and age, marketing tends to be clickbait titles, really trying to do snappy one-line headlines. And when it comes to sustainability, it's so nuanced. And so when you try to really shorten things and make things quick and snappy so that people can read it in 5 seconds, things can get misinterpreted. And that's where you can get into more of that greenwashing space, or into that space where you're not being super clear about what you're doing. And so there's a fine line. Don't oversimplify things. On the other side of things, you don't want to make something super, super complex and produce like a scientific report like I was just talking about, because that's not digestible. So you want to meet in the middle, somewhere where you're still informative, you're still educational, but it's still digestible to an everyday person that may not have a scientific background. And so a few rules of thumb. First of all, please don't say you are a carbon negative brand. I am going to go on a huge rant here, but I will keep it short. Basically, if you're going to be doing carbon offsetting by planting trees, that is great, and that's a good first step. However, you also want to see how you can reduce carbon as well, right? So I've seen so many brands that are now saying they're carbon negative because they've essentially said that they've assessed all their carbon emissions, which is really hard to do. And then they've just said they've planted more trees than the amount of carbon they're emitting. And then now all of a sudden they're claiming they're carbon negative. And it just doesn't work that way. So please, if you're in a situation where you're offsetting more than you think you're producing, I still think that there's a lot of work in regards to measuring carbon emissions, and there's still a lot of debate around how you do that, what that looks like. And so even if you're in that situation, I would just simply say that, hey, we planted X amount of trees last year. This is supposed to offset X amount of carbon. Last year, we have currently calculated that we've used this amount of carbon. And so currently, we have planted more trees than we have used carbon. But I wouldn't say that you're carbon negative, because I would do like an asterisk or something and then preface it by saying, disclaimer, we are still working on making our carbon emissions analysis more accurate. But at this point, we feel good about the amount that we're offsetting, but we're going to continuously try to reduce our impact. Something along those lines. And you know what I mean? Like, it's a little bit longer, of course, than just simply saying that you're carbon negative, because that's 2 words. But at the same time, I think consumers are educated and smart enough to understand what you're saying. And if you can present that in a way where it's literally just 3 or 4 lines, it's visually appealing, that's going to be so much more informative than just saying you're carbon negative, right? So don't oversimplify things, but then on the other end, also don't make it super, super scientific. And so what I like to say is empower your customers with the information, but do it in a way that's digestible. Don't oversimplify things. Don't fall into the trap of clickbaity headlines or clickbaity titles, because at the end of the day, sustainability is so much more complex than that. So empower your customer with the knowledge. Do it in a way that's user-friendly, and assume that your customer is smart, because people that care about sustainability and people that want to support brands, they're doing their research, so they're actually quite educated. And so don't treat your customers like they don't know anything. They're actually quite smart and informed. So just empower them with the knowledge and don't oversimplify things. My next tip is to take accountability. You are the founder of your own brand. You are working at this company. You're working on the sustainability strategy. That means that you are responsible for what the brand is doing, and so you need to take accountability. So if something does happen, or you have a suggestion on how to improve, I would not just disregard that, or I wouldn't treat it as a nuisance. Instead, I think you really need to treat it as an opportunity to do better because, like I talked about, you need to continuously improve your sustainability efforts. And so take accountability, own up to anything that you might have done, and just really appreciate the chance to learn and do better. That is so key. And if there's ever a situation where you get called out for doing something, I think it's really, really important to take ownership of it, explain why you made the decision you made based on your time, your resources, and your budget, and then make a plan to do better. That is so important. Instead of just treating these things as nuisances or deleting comments, I really feel like brands should be open to dialogue. And speaking of having an open dialogue, my next tip is to welcome questions because the fashion industry as a whole needs to change. I know you don't need to be convinced of that. And so as a result of that, we need to raise the bar and we need to continuously do better. And the only way that happens is if brands, consumers, and government works together. And so in this situation, we only have control of ourselves. We can also put pressure on other brands. And of course, we can continue to educate and inform consumers. And so in this case, if you're getting questions, welcome it because that also means that the consumer is becoming more educated and more informed and is likely asking the same questions to other brands that may not even have a strategy or anything put together. And so by doing this, we can really raise the bar of the entire industry. So welcome these questions. Don't get scared of them or don't feel like you need to delete comments. I think it's so important to have that discussion so that we can all continuously improve and go on this journey together. If you got a lot out of this video, make sure you take advantage of my additional free sustainability resources. Friendly reminder that there is an ebook and a great masterclass at recloseted.com/sustainability. Make sure you snag that. Additionally, I also did an amazing video all about sustainability best practices. So if you haven't watched that, make sure you watch that as well. Together, let's transform the harmful fashion industry.